I've said before that I thought the idea of marrying Storm and Black Panther was an ill-conceived publicity stunt that did very little for either character. While I know very little about Black Panther other than the basics, like he's a king of a wealthy, technologically advanced African nation, Storm is my favorite X-Man, so this is very much a story that I did not like in either execution or premise. First and foremost, when I think of this marriage of characters, it really feels like a couple of executives at Marvel had an epiphany. These are our two most well-known black characters, and they're both from Africa. What if they got married? This to me is about as ridiculous as if they said, we have two white characters. What if they got married because they are white? That is about what this marriage feels like to me in premise. However, when this story was happening, I could not count the number of times I'd seen someone say, they don't even know each other. Why is this happening? Boo-hoo! And as much as I hate the idea of these two characters getting married, I will say that at least Marvel didn't decide to marry Shala to Betty Brant or someone he didn't even know. But these two characters did know each other. In Marvel Team Up issue 100, we see that when they were both teenagers, Storm saved Shala's life. And then around the time that the wedding storyline happened, Storm had her own miniseries, which I guess the creators and editorial thought needed to happen to show a fraction of build-up to this very sudden story idea. In this miniseries, it is actually Black Panther who rescues Storm, because we can't have a big strong man being rescued by a frail, can we? In addition to these two stories set in the past, establishing their first meeting with each other and, according to the people behind the wedding, establishing their surefire romance, there was also references to Storm knowing Black Panther in Uncanny X-Men 387 in the year 2000. And, just a few short issues before the wedding storyline, in the Adjectiveless X-Men Black Panther crossover Wild Kingdom, there were also references to Storm and Shala's shared past. All of this is to say that while the characters knew each other, there really wasn't enough character interactions between these two to justify marrying them. I maintain that this feels like someone said, hey, they're both black and from the same continent, so let's get them married. Yes, they knew each other, but I knew a girl that I was in the same third grade class with over half of my life ago. That doesn't mean that if I saw her on the street now, that I would propose to her and get married without dating her or getting to know her. Yes, that happens in this book. Black Panther, after meeting Storm maybe a grand total of 8 times in his life, finds her in the African desert and proposes to her. And what makes this all the more maddening is that Storm eventually says yes. Not because it makes sense or is something that the character of Storm would do. I reiterate, this happens because editorial wanted it to happen. I don't actually read Black Panther, but I know that Chris Claremont, who was using Storm in Uncanny X-Men at the time, definitely did not want this story to happen. But judging how Marvel editorial has treated Claremont before, it comes as no surprise that his opinion was weighted about as heavily as a sparrow's teardrop, and this story went forward anyway. Since I don't read Black Panther, I'm not sure if people liked Reginald Hudlin's work on this book, or if he handled Shala consistently from how he was written previously by other writers. But I can say certainly that Storm is handled as if she's an entirely different character than the one I've come to fall in love with in X-Men over the years. If I was asked to describe Storm, I would say that she is calm, cool, and collected. She's a brilliant tactician and is loyal to her friends and to the cause of mutant human equality that she's fought for over the years that she's been in the X-Men. The way she is handled here feels more like she is a teenage girl who gets to marry a member of One Direction. She is nervous about meeting Shala's mother. She calls Shala a Googler when she finds out that he Googles himself, which might be funny dialogue, but it isn't something that Storm would say. Storm is regal, not casual, or at least not this casual. Aside from my severe problems with the sudden decision for Shala to marry a woman he hasn't even dated since he was a teenager, and the wild inaccurate handling of Storm herself, I just didn't find this book exciting or interesting at all. Nothing really happens in the entire book. This book collects issues 14 through 18 of the Black Panther series from 2006. We get to see Storm shopping for clothes, we get to see Luke Cage's valiant effort to set up a bachelor party for Shala, we see Shala's cousin is apparently a floating spirit that possesses bodies and wants to take possession of Shala's body so he can rule Wakanda. And even though Cousin Dude's body collapses in the middle of the reception, Shala doesn't even seem to care that his cousin is either dead or unconscious. We see the White Ape and Princess Xanda's separate attempts to stop the wedding from happening, both of which lead nowhere at all. There's no plot at all in this book, and while I think characters are important, I very much believe that there needs to be some kind of story with some kind of plot happening for the characters to act in. This book just doesn't have that. It's really just a huge waste of time. And even if there was some semblance of a plot through these issues, it really wouldn't matter at all because at least one of the characters is grossly handled. And if I knew a little bit more of Shala, I'm pretty sure, judging by how he handles Storm here, that Reginald Hudlin wouldn't be able to write Shala either. The single idea that I liked here was when Professor Xavier was giving his blessing to Storm, and he told her that she would be able to use her position as the queen of one of the most prominent nations in the world to help mutant-human relations. Honestly, giving superheroes more to do than just punching bad guys is interesting, but this is an example of it being done incorrectly. For one thing, in all of the time that Storm was married to Shala, it seems she was spending more time with the X-Men in the X-Men titles than she was actually doing what Professor Xavier said she'd be capable of doing. This is largely because if mutant-human relations improve in the Marvel Universe, then that leaves one less element of the X-Men status quo for writers to use in telling X-Men stories. Also, if this volume is any indication of what Hudlin would have done if he had been cleared to actually have Storm use her position as the Queen of Wakanda to better the world, then I can assure you it would have been as boring and plotless as this book was. Let me reiterate, I don't mind seeing superheroes doing things other than punching bad guys. In my review of Astonishing X-Men Ghost Box, I mentioned that I was interested in seeing more of Mutant Sans Frontiers, and what their work meant for the world of the Marvel Universe. But if a writer is going to provide a new element like that, they need to be sure to balance it out with some actual superhero action. Because even though I've twice now referred to superheroes fighting bad guys in a derogatory fashion, that is what people buy superhero comics for. Even if you don't buy Spider-Man to see him punch the Lizard, and you are instead more interested in seeing his relationships with his aunt, his girlfriend, and his boss at work, that's fantastic, but you'd probably still stop buying the book if the writers took out the fights with Dr. Octopus, the Green Goblin, and any other supervillain that he fights. In short, I am not even sure if there are really adequate words to explain how much I hated this book. I actually got this book as a mystery trade some months back when my local comic book shop had a deal where you would get a free trade if you spent over $10. Even after paying $0 and 0 cents for this story, I still feel like I've been robbed. I cannot recommend this book to anyone. It is a waste of time and paper, and I promise you that you could find something more worth your time and, failing that, more enjoyable than Black Panther: The Bride.